2 Kings chapter number 5. On the program yesterday, we had made it down into verse number 20 and 21. Gehazi cannot stand to allow this treasure that Naaman has brought with him to go back to Syria. The prophet Elisha has understood that there is a time to give and a time not to give. There's a time to receive gifts, and then there's a time not to receive gifts, to refrain from receiving gifts. And this happens to be one of those times. The laborer is worthy of his hire. There's not anything wrong with the minister being paid for his labor in the gospel. Paul the apostle said, "They that preach the gospel should live of the gospel." Over the course of my life, I have been bivocational, as was the apostle Paul. Especially when he was in Corinth, the scripture says that Paul made tents, and the reason he made tents is spelled out in the scripture there, that he might not be chargeable to those that were there in the city of Corinth. Paul was not going to be chargeable to those people. He wanted to be free, a free man, from being under conscription to those individuals there in Corinth. Now, I think that may line itself up some with Elisha not taking an offering or not taking a reward from Naaman, much like Paul the apostle at Corinth, refusing to receive wages from them, refusing to receive salary from them, but rather running his own business so that truly, in this instance, he could be a free man. He would not be chargeable to the individuals that were there in Corinth. Now, Gehazi can't bear this. He sees all of this money going up the road, and immediately he thinks about how he could use that money and how he could use those clothes. Those are beautiful clothes going back up the road. And the money and all of the things that Naaman brought it all to give away. Naaman had no intention of taking anything back to Syria with him. And here Gehazi says, "I just can't believe this. Elisha is not going to take any part of this offering. And all of this money's going back up the road. And Naaman brought it not to take home with him, but Naaman brought it to give away. And I just have to have some of this. I've got to take some of this for myself." I mentioned yesterday that maybe Gehazi is thinking that he's going to spoil, like the spoils of war, that he's going to spoil Naaman and spoil the Syrians by taking some of this money. Well, for whatever the reason may be, Gehazi steps outside the will of God. He goes beyond the will of God. He is now out of the will of God. He is away from the mind of God and the will of God in this manner. So he has to construct a ruse, a lie, if it were. He can't leave immediately after Naaman starts back to Syria. Why, everybody would know that he was following him back up the highway. He has to give enough space between the time that Naaman leaves to go back to Syria and then he leaves to pursue after him, so that no one would think that Gehazi is going to follow after Naaman. Then that requires an expending of much energy, because now he has to run him down. He has to overtake him. He has to follow after him and pursue him and run after him to finally run him down. Well, Gehazi does that. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and this is verse 21, "And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, 'Is all well?'" Naaman is going up the road now. He's in the marvel of his life. He's been healed. I think he got saved, as an Old Testament saint would be saved. I think the man Naaman has gotten saved. As an Old Testament believer, he is rejoicing in his heart. He can't wait to get home and tell his family and his people all that has transpired and all the good things that have happened. He's just marveling at the hand of God and the blessing of God and the goodness of God bestowed upon him. Now he sees Gehazi running up the highway behind him and sees him. And he stops the chariot and the wagon train and all the entourage of people that are with him. And he lights down out of the chariot and steps back to meet Gehazi. And he says, "Is all well?" And he said, "Is all well?" And Gehazi's response is, and he said, "All is well." Now, you and I should be very careful when we begin telling lies to try to accomplish our end or our means or our goals. And Gehazi is now about to enter into a long series of lies that are going to be spoken. He says, "Is all well?" Naaman says, "Is all well?" And he said, "All is well." Now, that is not entirely true. If all was well, Gehazi would have never pursued after Naaman. Gehazi would have been satisfied with the goodness of God and the provision of God in the land of the living. Gehazi would have been satisfied to follow his master's word when his master said, "This is not a time to receive gifts." And Gehazi would have taken that at face value. He would have believed that at face value and followed after what his master had said. So all is truly not well. Then Gehazi says in verse 22, "My master hath sent me, saying, Behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim two young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments." So if this is 2 changes of garments each, that will be 4 of the changes of garments that Naaman brought. "And give unto them the gold. I pray thee give them a talent of silver." And I would take that to be a talent each of silver. So there'd be 2 talents of silver. And 2 changes of garments. So that'd be a total of 4 changes of garments. Now what you and I have just read here is a bald-faced lie. Anytime you begin telling lies, there is no place for you to stop. One lie will require another lie, which will require another lie, which will require another lie, and before it's all said and done, you're going to have the reputation of being a liar. You begin telling lies, and there's no place for you to ever stop telling lies. You start telling lies, and you'll have to tell lies the rest of your life. You'll have to tell one lie to cover for another lie, to cover for another lie, to cover for another lie. If you'll tell the truth, you don't have to have a very good memory. But if you're going to begin telling lies, you better have a memory like a steel trap, because you'll have to remember every lie you told and to whom you told those lies, because sooner or later you're going to get caught up in a lie. Now, it's one thing for you to misspeak, for you to say something that may not be exactly right. You give out a telephone number and mistakenly your brain fails you, your mind or memory fail you, and you give the wrong number or wrong digit or something of that nature. I'm not talking about that. That's not what happens here. Gehazi is not misspeaking. Gehazi is telling a bald-faced lie. Gehazi is lying like a rug lying on the floor. He is telling a bald-faced lie at this point. He begins by stretching the truth, and that's generally how lying begins whenever you begin to make a misrepresentation. Naaman said, "Is all well?" and he said, "All is well." That is a misrepresentation of the truth. all is not well. I've already said this. I'm not going to repeat it. If all was well, Gehazi wouldn't be standing there. He would have believed God and believed his master Elisha, and he would have said, well, that was a lot of money that I missed out on, but God is always able. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. God is always able to make a way. And he'd have stayed home. So we have a misrepresentation that leads into a bald-faced lie. My master hath sent me. That is a lie. Elisha not only did not send Gehazi, it was Elisha that told Gehazi not to go. It was Elisha that instructed Gehazi to stay where he was. It was Elisha that instructed Gehazi that he was not to pursue after Naaman, and that it is not a time to receive gifts. It was Elisha that explained to Gehazi that we should be free from this man. This man has brought these Syrian offerings to us and Syrian gifts, and we should not be under obligation to that. We need to be free from that. This is not a time to receive gifts. In fact, Elisha is going to bring this back up. He's going to say in verse 26, is it a time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and manservants and maidservants and so on? There's a time and a place for everything. There's a time to receive gifts and offerings, but there's a time to not receive gifts and offerings. And this was not a time to receive gifts. My master hath sent me. That's a bald-faced lie. Then he said, behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Now, this is a classic lie. Gehazi is saying, this is not for me, it's for someone else. How many times have we heard that? I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for you. How many politicians have stood and said, this is for the children. We need increased school funding for the children. We have principals down there making $175,000 a year, faculty members making $75,000, $80,000 a year, but it's not for them, it's for the children. Politicians say that we need this tax increase for the children. We need this for the children. This is the oldest lie known to man. This is not for me, it's for someone else. This is to help them. And Gehazi says these 2 young preacher boys have come, and they've enrolled in school, and they come from a poor background. And he said, give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver. They need that to pay the school tuition. And 2 changes of garments. They need some clothes to wear to school. They've just come in off the farm, and they're wearing overalls, and they need a suit of clothes. They need trousers and nice shoes to wear to class. It's not for me, it's for someone else. That's the oldest ruse and the oldest lie in the book. Now, I'll have to continue with this on tomorrow. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day. How wonderful that will be. And I hope that God will bless each of you abundantly on a wonderful Thanksgiving Day on tomorrow.
Check out the website at thebrightspothour.com. Write Dr. Carter at Post Office